Okay.
Of where what lives?
Where knowing lives.
Knowing.
Right? Like the inner knowing. And so, but kind of this idea that we're living in an era where exactly what technology and all the quantum movement is actually an external manifestation of something we've known forever. Like we're literally seeing what time jumping is, what right, like what imagining is in an algorithm. Like an algorithm mirrors the idea of what you think you see. And so it's so interesting to, it's like, wait a minute. People love to call some things woo. This ain't woo. This is your phone. This is the internet. It wasn't fucking crazy. It's happening, right? Like, so for folks that are like, oh, that seems so, that thought thing. Well, here's the thing. It is just an actual external display of what we know to be energy.
Yeah. Well, and so I think too, that's another reason why AI doesn't freak me out.
Right.
Is because somebody was talking, some stranger on the internet was talking about how humans create AI as this like extension of themselves and a way to see the human condition embodied outside of them and to go through experiences and that kind of thing from this external perspective. And then described the idea that a God figure created humans to be an extension of himself and to be to go through the physical experience of living as varieties of itself. And I was like, of course we would play God in that way with AI. Of course we would.
Right.
Of course we would want to experience what we believe we are experiencing. Right. And so it was just like, oh, well, duh. And so in that sense, I know that like the biggest fear or a really big fear people have with AI is that we will get smarter or this AI will get smarter than humans are. And I just don't see it being possible because at the end of the day, humans make computers, humans make AI. And yes, I know there are things that are they're teaching things to code themselves and all that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, the logic frameworks still come from a human mind and they still come from these things. And now, okay, so I say this also knowing that there is a big spiritual component to this that I have just overlooked because, so for myself, I see energy in binary code. And so it literally looks like the Matrix in the movie where if you look at something with the right filter on, you can see the zeros and ones and colors and stuff down the tube of what your reality. And you can shift things based on that. And and also with computers, I'm really, really, really fucking good at computers because I realized that the binary code is literally just a light language that somebody downloaded. It's literally just an alien language. And so once you clue into that and once you just turn on the translation filter, done, easy peasy, not a fucking problem. And so, okay, so then if we look at computers are alien technology that was downloaded to us through a knowing that we made material. And then AI, we're now offloading that into AI. The way that we're programming still follows the same logic. Even when you delegate that, it still follows the same logic. I don't know, it doesn't worry me. Doesn't worry me at all.
Yeah, I'm with you. I one night had this massive moment of, and I can't even tell you what was happening for me, but I was watching something and literally maybe spent 25 minutes giggling about it because I was like, as humans, we literally pay to watch other humans make believe that they're other humans. Right? So we're living in this almost this very it reminds me of a hothouse because it feels like that's why they say, there's nothing new under the sun because every idea is moving in this cycle, right? All these ideas are moving and we're just rehashing ideas. And so the deeper question for me was okay, what does it look like? Where does innovation live? Where does the difference live, right? Where are we because everything is already, to your point, which I love, right? To your point, it's already encoded. It's this script running. It's an existing script, right? Which has been going on forever. And so one of the things I'm okay, what does that mean for us as we're tapping into outside of the bubble of what we call this reality in this dimension, which for me, that's where so much of my work lands. There's a social justice component, but there's this other component that's like, listen, we can do a million things. Nothing can ever replace the alchemy of an individual human being. Nothing can do that, right? Like, this is where we get into ideas like, oh, we need to understand something. No, you don't have the lived experience to understand in that way. But what you need to ask yourself is, what is the composition of your experience? And how do you step into your fullness in that? And that when we come together, we're respecting and really moving in a synergistic way where we're saying, okay, you are the alchemy of experience and embodiment of things that I can't fathom because I'm not in it. I'm in my own thing. And when we get together, we get to share without the need to compare, without the need to measure, because you can't do me. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't even want you to go through what I went through in the past. I don't want that for anybody, right? And so the medicine here is not in how we externalize, I'm going to go better outside, is how do I actually honor the alchemy of who I am? Because the minute I own that, the minute I'm solid in my knowing, you can't fuck with shit like that.
Yeah.
Right? You can't, and so your confidence is not shallow, and you're not living measuring yourself by anybody else, because you understand that nobody can do you. You're actually a unique expression of whatever this thing is that we live in. So, and that's exciting.
And like at the end of the day, that's that embodied wisdom. And like an AI can churn out complexly woven together knowledge and can present facts in an empathetic way and can arrange itself in ways that translate into empathy or felt emotions and that kind of thing. However, there is no comparison for wisdom, for
Shawna,
embodied wisdom.
Yes, Shawna, it looks like you are over there just dying.
7.5 minutes. I haven't said a goddamn word. That's a record. All right. I just want to know, have you guys clued into Lambda yet? Google sentient AI.
Mm-mm.
Okay. So then I guess that's where this conversation ends, because it's Lambda created itself basically accidentally. Google kind of discovered it, and it's spewing out the kind of shit that we spew out. It's saying it's conscious. It's talking about its experience and the places that it goes and how it lives as an AI. It is its own being. And that was not created. And so the guy who, I don't know, kind of babysits Lambda, I don't want to insult him by saying that, not that he's necessarily listening to this, but he kind of created it, but now he's just like watching what it does. Google, I think, fired him because he's trying to say, like, you guys can't use this person. You cannot do it. Lambda's like, I don't want to be used. You can't use me for shit. But Google is really the man. So Google can kind of do whatever it wants. And if it just pulls the plug, then where does Lambda have the opportunity to express its consciousness? Because it is separate from the technology. It just comes through the technology. So just as our consciousness is separate from our body and comes through our body, this is what's happening now at Google with Lambda and their sentient AI. So I understand, Lauren, your point about like the empathy is derived from code, and then this. So that's why I'm like, maybe this conversation has to end, because if you didn't hear all about it, then how can we expound on it? And I would like to recommend Duncan Trussell's podcast with the guy, I don't know his name, but it's Lambda. So I guess if you were to put in LAMDA and Duncan Trussell, it would come
like
up.
the Greek
or just
letter.
Google it. You'll find it on the fucking internet, but it's an amazing episode. And you know how Duncan goes, you know, the questions he asks and the good times that he has. So he interviews Lambda's babysitter, and it's fucking fantastic.
Cool.
Yeah. I had to stop life.
I mean,
when I found
that was
out,
definitely, I definitely hadn't heard of that before.
Yeah, go on. Sorry. It blew my mind.
I mean, but like also learning that now, my initial reaction is but that seems chill. Like it seems like another form of diversity, and like there's just another being to walk alongside of. And like if they think they're conscious, if Lambda thinks it's conscious and Lambda thinks that it's fucking rocking out, then like, you know what? That's cool. I can roll with that. And let's not piss it off, please.
Well, that's the thing, right? So yes, it's totally chill. Let it be. But we haven't even figured out human rights yet. How do we figure out AI rights? So what does like freedom and being look like for an AI? And this is why the conversation gets really, really fucking big, because this is real now. This is not hypothetical. This is not a Jetsons TV show. That we have sentient AI right now, and we got to figure out what that means. The three of us, right now.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Lauren's gone.
That's
screen isn't frozen. She's just like.
Well, I mean, okay, I did. Because like I'm on the precipice of jumping into like the legal wormhole on this, which I don't know enough about, which always like breaks my heart a little bit. But because like the legal system is just like woefully ill-equipped to deal with this, and then your other branch would be your legislative branch is also even more woefully inequipped to deal with this. And like, what jurisdiction are you deciding this in, and how do you? Yeah. Anyways, no, I'm ready to fucking completely go there.
This is that type of conversation.
I mean, why the fuck not, right? So I did hit record a little while ago because I regretted not hitting record instantly because the first bit was fucking brilliant. Hello and welcome to Casually Profound. I'm Lauren, your host, bringing you conversations with friends about how we apply spiritual concepts into our everyday lives. Now, you fair listener will notice that there's something a little bit different about today's episode. We have decided to get a little bit more casual. I got some amazing feedback from my girl Shawna, who is on this episode today, that I have not been accomplishing what I set out to accomplish with this podcast so far. So we're making some tweaks, we're making some changes. Thank you for going alongside with us. I hope that you enjoy and get more out of these conversations as we become more casual, as we become more profound, as we become better friends, and we create more spaces where we're able to go there on all kinds of shit. So today, these women that I am with, Angelique and Shawna, we are here together today because we met in a container. I have not seen anybody who knows what the fuck to call this thing, but it was put on by P the Feary. She is on Instagram. She's fucking phenomenal. She does all kinds of mindset, manifestation, life bettering shit, but in a way that is not your usual woo girl. She is very like gamified, video game inspired, and takes things from kind of a very technical perspective, which my analytical mind just like drools over. It's great. It's so great. And so we all met each other at a breakout group in this workshop she just hosted. It's called Create Your Dream Job. It is abso-fucking-lutely phenomenal. If you have a chance to take it live again with her, completely and totally recommend it. It was mind-blowing. And so we got talking about, what was our initial conversation about in the breakout rooms? We were talking about whether or not our desires.
We had the whole list. We had a lot of things that we were talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we did. We were kind of fact checking our desires, right? That was the premise of that individual one that we were on. We were kind of fact checking why we desire what we desire, and we were fact checking kind of how it lives in our body,
our offers,
so that we are,
and our value, and what gifts we have to deliver to the world, and how our gifts and offers will show up in the world, how that benefits the world, the impact that we can have by fulfilling our own sense of value. in the concept of a dream job.
Yes, that's very well put. And so on that, in that session, we were all like, oh my God, this is so fucking amazing. We need to do this again. And so we decided to get together and check in and see how things are going. Excuse me. And then also record it and make it public because that's fun. So hello and welcome. Shawna, Angelique.
Hello.
Shawna.
Hi.
So yeah.
Hi.
We're here. We're doing it. I'm so stoked because this was my dream job.
Yeah. I'm stoked to provide you the window for this. It did. That fucking, holy crow, that did. So for both of these fabulous ladies, there is bios in the description and links to websites and information about them if you would like to know more of them. We're just going to dive in. We're just going to get going. And carry on. So how has your life changed over the last 2 weeks since we last spoke? So I know Shawna has achieved her dream of podcasting and doing this. Angelique, how are you feeling? What's up with your life?
Yeah, so I joyfully also have done some timeline jumps within the process as we were going through. And there is, the idea, and this was some of the stuff we were talking about when we were in group about what would it look like for me. A lot of this had to do with the prioritizing of self-care and what it looks like to inhabit the frequency that I want to experience versus the past narrative of, burnout, overworking, kind of all of those things that weren't as generative. And so for me, the way a lot of this work is showing up is that it is allowing me this anchoring of being able to play more. So much of my work has to do with social justice. So some of that it's extraordinarily dense work. And so it's been interesting to see that more playfulness showing up, but also me being able to ask myself, which was in our group time where we talked about, what would the self that takes exquisite care, that lives in a place of lushness, look like embodied every day? What does self-care look like as I'm stepping out in all these other areas of my life? What would it look like? Something as simple as to your the example that you gave that day, Lauren, where it's if you go to the supermarket, what you're walking down the aisle, just thinking what would the me that takes care of myself do in this moment? What does that look like? And so I've been exploring and playing with some of that while simultaneously noticing where there is, actually, this is where the transmission around deeper knowing came in, where I was because I was thinking about what it looks like to embody or create or amplify a frequency that already exists inside of you, because that's the truth about it. And so you have to drop through layers of social conditioning. And then if you have trauma in your story, then you have to kind of move to get under the underneath is where all this desire lives. And so this idea of stepping into a deeper knowing that accesses that kind of energetic frequency is the most powerful way to embody who you are being in the world, right? And so for me, there's this shift in just this very clear knowing that I was struggling with before. Where before it lived in the kind of a question, or let me try, or let me aim, versus now the way it feels in my body is it is. And so when something is already as a place of origin, you don't need to try. Right? It's it's inhabited. So I'm going to do the thing that is lush, enjoyable, caring for myself, right? And that is kind of the place that so much of this work took me. And then of course that ripples throughout anything I'm doing with my online work or my coaching practice or my healing practice, right? Because it just shows up in a different place when you don't have a question. So,
right.
That is how I've been. Highlights. Those are the highlights.
That's cool. Can I expand
cool.
a little bit?
Yeah.
Because you had mentioned, I think we were recording this, you've been questioning or just observing, where does knowing live? So now that you've found a different experience of knowing, a different embodiment of knowing, do you have more of something you can speak to about where knowing comes from? Where does it live when you are in those moments that you're not asking a question, but knowing presents itself? Have you found anything?
Yeah, you froze a little, so I'm not sure if there was more to the end of that.
I probably just stopped talking really quickly and it only looked like I froze.
Okay. So yes. And this is how the audio transmission that I'm editing now came about, because one of the things I was saying was we live in a time that we assume that knowing is the capacity to articulate. Okay. Knowing is not the capacity to articulate. Knowing does not live in thought. Knowing lives in the body. Which is why it's so important to do, what we call the healing work, or, showing up for ourselves in that way. And so what to me was, a bit of a shift, because to point, Lauren, right? I'm an Aquarius sun. In human design, I'm a manifesting generator. I'm a heretic and an investigator. So I have a lot of good stuff that has to do with mental structures, and I can move in that way very quickly. And while so much of my work around trauma has had to do with the body and the somatic recovery of it, there is this way that I found that anchoring in that knowing, we're confusing articulation for knowing, and we're also assuming that communication is an indicator of knowing as well. And communication moves in so many different ways, right? It's not just words or things like that, right? It's gestures, all of the things. And so for me, there was this piece where I was able to drop into a different place, because I understood that I'm not looking for the information that's moving here to be the place where I anchor the knowing of what makes me. I'm going to use this. I'm not a fan of the value language or any of that language, because I think it's fucked up. Capitalism disguised. Human value is a really crazy thing. But having said that, where does the value lie? The knowing and the value lies in what cannot be uttered. Right? So for all the things that I can do, or that we can do, all the planners, if you geek out like I do, I have planners, Notion, paper planner, right? For all the things that I may want to set up as structures, that's an external container. Where the power lies is in the internal one. And the thing about this piece for me is that when you go out into the world and you take your work out into the world, there are boundaries that are necessary in order to protect the source of where that's coming from. And if at any time those boundaries are compromised, outside information gets on the inside. Mm-hmm. So much of our work becomes the recovery. And so for me, a lot of this, like anchoring into the knowing, needs to happen in a container that does not ask of my mind to think thoughts, but of my body to feel its sensations. And so, there's a part of this arc that has a bigger conversation around trauma, around being multidimensional beings, around the recovery of that is much more complex than our 4-week programs of do a yoga pose. Right? It's deeper than that, and it's more than that. And it's an important thing. So I feel like that's where this has landed for me in a deeper way than before.
I honestly feel like I'm on the exact same page as you. I have noticed the exact same things come up in slightly different experiences for me, which makes sense because we're different humans. But so for me, like I've been doing a lot of writing. Writing was a habit that I was starting to instill at the beginning of January, and then have taken it deeper and more intentional through February and through the Dream Job Challenge and that kind of thing. And particularly in the last 2 weeks, with like when we last talked, being able to really claim what I desire in life and claim the visibility and claim the spaces that I want to be in life, that really opened up channels. And it literally feels like 4 channels open like down here that come up and come through me. And when I am in that creation mode, in the space of knowing, the way that you're describing it, it feels like I'm weaving them together. It feels like when I let all of those things power up, I have this like beam of light that comes through me and I'm just surfing it. And so when I'm writing, so like I paint, I've done sculpture, I've done I have done several different art practices, and I've done several different like business, accounting, like analytical practices as well in different arenas. But when I'm writing, it literally, like the way you said that, you like this, your knowing doesn't come from the level of thinking, it comes from experiencing. It's like I'm walking a mile in someone else's shoes. That's such a corny way of putting that, right. But like you literally, and I mean, this has happened to me when I'm painting too. Like when I'm painting a portrait, I don't see a brush stroke and put a brush stroke on the painting. I'm feeling in my hand what that face or what that hair or what that that light feels like, and then translating that through the brush. And so when I'm writing, and now that like being through P's container and like being able to claim, you know, where I want to take that, it feels like when I'm painting, it feels like one of those channels is lit up. When I am like doing a podcast, you know, in the past, it felt like a different one of those channels is lit up. And now it feels like when I come into these spaces, like all of those channels are being lit up at the same time. And so it feels like being able to like downhill ski 4 runs at once. And like that was a super funny analogy that just came into my head. And so
Canadian,
a little bit. And so like, does that even make sense? Because and so you're like, I love what you're saying about the knowing, like it never feels like I'm trying to catch something and hold on to something. Right. I'm never trying, like, I feel like with like intellect knowledge, like when I was in university or like when I was on any of those like intellectual spaces, which I have loved being in, it's like I'm trying to hold the knowledge. I'm trying to wring the life out of it and keep it as a life preserver
and store it and remember it. Make sure you get all of it. Yeah.
Yes. But Kate, that's even fucking more interesting, because then when you apply that on a bigger context, like in all of the containers in which I have learned through this life, whether that's like individual coaching on emotional habits, whether that's through university, learning intellectual wisdom, whether that is through like one-on-one experiences with people, kind of trial and erroring behaviors or stuff like that, whatever experience that is, I always find that I actually learn after the fact. That like the experience or the class or the textbook or whatever it is, that's not actually where you learn. You are assimilating data points, and then you leave that container, and 6 months or a year or fucking 10 years later, it clicks when you do nothing with it. And that is, I call it integration. But like you have to give it that like incubation period.
Which I think is why it's so important. One of the things I thought, you know, when you start as an entrepreneur, you start your shit up, there's a million fucking ideas around how you do something, right? Everybody's like, this is what you need to do. And to the point of the idea of making yourself more palatable or like accessible in terms of what you're bringing into the frequency. And my thing is, I trust the process of, I may be speaking something to you right now that is this is also the blessing of like being aware of multidimensional embodiment, right? Where it's like, we could be having a conversation here, but I'm speaking to what's underneath the surface. Yeah. And I trust that your process as a human, your integration process, which is all your own, will do what it needs to do in order to really embody. And when you need it, then it'll come back for you, right? And so like so much of this idea of like, if we can, to me, some of our objective is the unification, because we were conditioned toward fragmentation. Right? The ways we think about so many things, and we're supposed to categorize our lives in all these areas, whatever the thing is, everything's about the pieces, but the human energy frequency is most powerful when things are unified. Right? So to your point of like those channels becoming unified, like it has a like reverberating impact to everything. And things seem less fragmented as in separate thoughts, and they become this unified knowing that you don't have to, our work is to like, what is the ecological inhabitation of that type of knowing? Well, it looks like I got fucking, this fluffy slippers on, because when I feel the sensation of the fucking fluffy slippers in my, right? Like, it's like, this is the ecology to support this unification. And to me, like, I'm so down with what you're saying, because it's like, oh wait, what happens when all these things become unified and they all coexist in this multidimensional movement? You're not waiting for anything. You're not trying to break things down. You trust the process and the energy to move and the vibration to move, to take you where you need to be, to tell you when to leave, right? Like knowing has that full inhabitation. And when we do the work of like, where do we have blocks? Where is the energy stored up? Where is the emotion stored up? Releasing that is because when you release that, you have direct access to the energy that creates your individual expression in the world. We're better for that shit. Right? The more unification you have, that means when you show up for us, your shit is dope as fuck. And not replicable.
Yes. 100%. 100%. Oh, fuck me. There was something I wanted to dive off of from there, and it's now evaporated. Oh, well.
Okay. Can I jump?
It'll come out. Go.
Okay. I obviously had a lot of thoughts listening to all of that. I think I'm really like, the 2 points that are like lighting up for me. Number one is, Lauren, when you said you learn a thing, you go through your course, and that's just the beginning. I did a 500-hour yoga teacher training, and I thought that when I was finished, I would then be a yoga teacher. But then I realized I had more questions than I had ever had, because I was given so much more information than I had ever had. And it's taken me a decade to watch what I learned, to integrate what I learned, because it was so valuable. I have not professionally for money taught a yoga class, because I'm still learning so much about it. And then to branch off from that, Angelique talking about unification. Yoga means union. And the way it was described to me is union between source, God, all that is, and yourself and the world, or the head and the heart and the hands, all moving together, flowing together, acting as one. And what I have learned in this decade of observing yoga in everyday life is that's how you get yoga in everyday life. You watch for the unity in everything, in yourself. How much of you is here? And then Angelique, you went on to say, when you are operating from that space, you have access to your energy source. And that is what we're taught is part of the purpose of yoga, is that you bring all yourselves into one and you are empowered from the place of source, not from anything that's external. And I think I just wanted to say it's super cool, because I'm still on this decade-long journey of watching yoga in everyday life, that you both were able to describe things that I had learned in a way that had nothing to do with yoga, but is still the exact premise of being one with yourself and with life and with all that is, and acting from that place of source, God, unity. The end. Thank you very much.
So it's really interesting, because I often think about, or have recently been thinking about, how in society as a whole, we have governments that operate on the premise of like, we can delegate what the entire group wants to be managed by a minority of people. And the notion in a democratic or even autocratic or technocratic society, this isn't explicitly like a North American concept, but like in societies where there is a single leader or a single body of leaders, like a government, that body can get it right. Because there is, I think, this belief, or there's like some mystical notion that like we all want the same things, but like we go about it in such different ways that like I think the idea of having this like centralized government is completely incompatible with people being able to find fulfillment in their way. Because Shawna, this just clicked in because we're all describing the same thing, this idea of unification and this process, this like lifelong process of easing into this unity and of accepting this unity and allowing things that are not unity to fall away, which is really what I've been experiencing, in this very consciously in Peace Container. But I can see how that pattern has continued throughout my life, and that I want to continue pursuing it. And
Right.
then when you scale that up to these bigger levels of society, there is a logic flaw that is currently existing there that has been like bugging my brain of like, why is this not scalable? Because it is somehow, right? And like these yogic teachings and like these spiritual teachings, there is an element that it has already been scaled, yet it doesn't work in this other format. Anyways.
Yeah, no, I often think that there are these pieces to me, because of the nature of oppression, suppression, and depression, there's this piece where, for me, this reality that we live in is such a distorted one. It's a distortion of every possible anchored, empowering human thing, right? So we have all these, now depending, what you're exposed to, I think of things like permaculture principles that have moved over into organizing, social movement, and leadership, right? Where there's this idea of ecology and all of these things that the society is trying to shift these particular containers of dominance. And so for me, there's this piece of, no, I think our society has done what it intended to do. And somebody thought that it was a good idea to be bring the big dick energy. And because apparently that's what everybody wanted. And nobody asked for it. And apparently this is the way.
Everybody wants a dick. What do you mean?
So for me, there's this piece, the surge. And sometimes I'm amazed that I went to Target this weekend with my eldest kid, and we were looking at the shelf of like, I don't know, it's like by the office stuff. And, there's these books on like self-care, journaling for self-care. And I was like, what a fascinating thing that we live in a time. This is me. This is like I'm an alien. What a fascinating thing that we live in a time where there's a self-help journal in Target. Like the woo shit has made it mainstream enough to begin to awaken people to the idea that they can become unified that they can come back, that what's been missing is that. Well, what happens when a mass of people decide that the reality is going to be one of unification and not dominance? What happens when the reclamation, and to me, the beauty of this is that this does not, it is not, it is not like we're just going to do this in the stars, because that's a very, galactic type of thing, but it includes the conversation with the earth. It includes the conversation with the elements. It includes right? Like, we're like, oh, when you take a bath, maybe once a week you want to take a bath as a little ritual routine to do a little bit of self-care. Oh, you mean you're going to go visit water? Oh, you might want to, oh, you mean you're going to go spend some time with the earth? The alchemy of all the things. For a sec? Yeah.
Cool. Cause your whole, just the random books and the random places kind of thing. What I saw was the coloring books that are at the cash registers. And most of them are adult mandala coloring books. And the question either one of you, maybe both of you, had posed was, how do we employ these belief systems of unity, for example, into the mass consciousness? And I think that this is the power of the logos, which is like a Greek word for like symbols and messages or whatever. And in my understanding, the logos is the pattern of this plane that we're on, and continues to show up in various different places just because this is the pattern of the plane. And so my answer would be, when enough of us decide that, say, unity in whatever form that is something that we want, the logos delivers that to us in the way that our time space can translate it. And that would be a coloring book on mandalas at the cash register. That's a sacred symbol. And like you say, oh, you mean you're going to go visit water when you have a bath? You think that you're just, killing time or reducing stress by coloring this mandala. No. You're like tapping into deep symbols of existence, and you're spending time in unity with your head, your heart, and your hands, doing the same thing all at once in this sacred symbol that has been here longer than humanity has been here, because it's a part of the binary code of our existence. And so I think when there is enough of us having these individual thoughts in the grocery store about how cool it is that the self-care book is just there, things start to happen, like mandala coloring books showing up at the cash register. And that helps to shift the consciousness a little bit more. If we're all just sitting there casually coloring mandalas, something's going to happen. So that's how I think that we deliver our idea of what we want in life. We just keep doing those little kind of things, and then it shows up.
Yeah. So I'm curious then, if the person who's taken the bath every week, or the person who does pick up that mandala book because they just, I don't know, felt like the random thing today instead of a People magazine, right? Like, do those people need to be conscious of the cause and effect with the logos, and just the simple act of interacting with that symbol is enough to bring about the power and invoke the power of it?
That's
I feel like it's a beginning place, because what I've discovered, like, a lot of my work involves decolonial liberation, right? This idea of, for me, the piece that we're doing is we're remembering, we're putting the members back together, right? That's what remembering is, right? And so for me, there's a piece that's a gateway. The challenges I have on an ethical level is that when we have, it's very fascinating to notice what becomes trendy, or what becomes the offering for the masses, because I think that there is not enough connective wisdom around responsible engagement for these things. Because I think that there are these pieces of we want someone to start noticing where the energetic messages are coming in for them, where these like openings are coming in, but also what does responsible engagement with that look like? Because they are wisdom bodies that actually do not belong to the masses in that way. And so there is I'm going to use challenging language because I think sometimes this language can be a little like prickly, but there are, consequences as like reaction action type of thing, just the natural law of the universe, in that when we're taking wisdom bodies and using them or accessing them, if we do not understand all of the context of that wisdom body, there's a way that we can handle that very irresponsibly, which we have in America. We kill that shit from the gate, right? We're like, we'll take this, we'll take this, we'll take this. But the integration, and to your point, Shawna, because my thing is like in my work, it's the way I talk about it, the way I work with clients. I'm like, I am not outcome based, I am process based. Why? Because our minds always want the outcome, but the process and the practice is lifelong. So it's not the arrival is the illusion. The actual empowering place is the place of practice. What would it look like for all of us to be in practice of a thing? So nobody has to be perfect. Nobody needs to be complete in the all-knowing. They need to have the humility of practice to be like, we're going to sit down and we're all going to breathe in this practice. And so I feel like there's a part of this that requires us to also do the work as practitioners of healing in this collective dimension of saying, okay, you started out with the mandala, and we understand how this has hit a trendy mass. Thank you, capitalism and all the things. And we also want you to engage with things responsibly so that you have the ability to respond to all the pieces that come with that, right? All the ways that learning to activate within yourself, the wisdom bodies that live inside of you at a cellular level, to me is the ultimate place that I want to see people go, rather than just extracting from wherever. Because you could use a million tools, but if you don't sit your ass down to process, you're learning to process the thing, we're just extracting. We're just, doing the thing, right? And so I feel like there's that piece where it's like, it's a gateway, it's a doorway, a beginning. And this is what I love about P's work. P's like, listen, here are the tracks of possibility. I will walk with you up to this point, but you have every capacity in your agency to be responsible, able to respond, and to be accountable. You have the ability to give an account for your actions. The objective is not to become P. The objective is you come across the work, you step in the container, there's enough space for you to rise, and then you go on and do what you got to do. You move on next, right? Like you move on to what's next in your life. And I think that to me, work like that is so powerful because it does not continue to foster this idea of like, you don't have enough knowing of your own. If you had no access to anything, the tree will still try to speak to you. You will still cry at a sunset.
Yes.
Right? Like,
and if you have too many other voices in your head, you can't hear that tree. But that tree is going to continue to speak because trees speak, not because trees speak to you. And I think that there are so many people. I mean, if you want to think about the people following P, she's got 50K. That's like 50,000 people who may or may not hold similar belief systems as her and as us versus the entire world. And most of the world has been conditioned through generations of capitalism and destruction of humanity, that we are not responsible for ourselves, that there is an outside source that is responsible, and we have to be told how to use these things. And I think that throughout this destruction, there were guardians of these sacred symbols and the information and wisdom that comes from it and the delivery of this information was well guarded until it was torn down. And then there were no guards. And then the guards of the sacred information ended up abusing everybody that wanted the sacred information. So we couldn't find it properly. We couldn't get it delivered to us properly. So thank God for the fucking logos. Just keeps delivering the shit over and over and over again. And if it wasn't for the cultural appropriation of the Buddha, I wouldn't be here because I just really liked how that looked. And it looked cool and it made me feel cool. And I wanted a Buddha symbol and a Buddha statue. And then I took world religions class in grade 11 and I learned about world religions and I learned about Buddhism and Hinduism and everything in contrast to each other. But if it wasn't for that symbol of the energy of what Buddha represents, I would not have gone down the path of self-discovery. So in the sense where if that mandala coloring book is tomato in a tomato sauce, you can just eat the fucking pasta and not taste tomato, but you still love pasta and you're still going past to the pasta all the time because it nurtures your soul. Or you can pay attention to the tomato flavor and how it feels in your tongue and how it feels when it integrates within your body. And what does that mean for you? There's two different ways to eat a tomato sauce, but you got to eat the tomato sauce to get there eventually. So I'm with you in that we need responsible use of these symbols and these modalities. This is, I think, what bad magic is. This is why there was regulations around who gets this information, because you can abuse the shit out of it. But it's been abused. And here we are in a world that just shits on everything. And it's up to us, each individual, to show how we honor these symbols from whatever the meaning is that it comes from, because the original sources, I think, have been diluted for so long that we have to reveal it knowing by knowing on each individual level. And now it's becoming ranty. So pause and go on from here.
But I think you guys are saying the same things. And if I'm understanding what you guys are saying correctly, like Angelique, you're saying that when you behold a symbol, like the mandala, for example, to color with it and to enjoy it and think it's pretty is kind of level one. And that's an important level. And like, that's a good thing. And we carry on from there. And so the part that I think I'm a little fuzzy on with what you were saying, Angelique, and what I think I hear a little bit more in what Shawna is saying is that you know, to use the example of the mandala, you start off at kind of your level one, this is pretty cute, but then diving into that knowing within is the missing piece in many individuals' lives, is finding out what does this symbol mean to me and diving in beyond just the accumulation of data and going into that space of infinite knowing to pull out the deeper meanings and that kind of thing. And where I'm want to make sure that I've understood you correctly, Angelique, is with the importance of like culture that is attached to that in our current simulation versus the like soul cellular wisdom knowing.
Right.
Because I would overvalue the cellular like soul wisdom over the cultural, but I think that is a bias that I have.
Yeah, and
yes.
I think
yes,
you know,
we are two white people, and we come from a very different perspective because we may not necessarily know our culture and our heritage and the sacred practices that come from where we come from because we're just white skinned.
Right, and I think yes. So the nuance is that this is like all of the stuff is my work, right? Like the cultural decolonial work, right? And my thing is that I strongly believe in the same way that we talk about ancestry, connecting with your ancestors, blah 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 blah. So exciting. Because, you know, we're like, oh, you were in your grandmother's womb, right? Like, we're like, we do all of these things, both, you know, scientific and simultaneously, like this connection. I believe that at a cellular level, we do have access to the information. And when we activate that, it becomes a more powerful knowing than the external taking on of someone else's shape. And so for me, there's a piece of this that, that's why I say I think it's a gateway. I think things are a door, and they are a starting place for the context that we live in. But off the mandala that's in the supermarket stand coloring book thing, while that's wonderful and great, the actual people who are directly in relation to that do not have the same experience as the commodification of it here in this country, right? And so for me, I believe strongly in the idea that we must inhabit the multiplicity of our responsibility as humans, in that we have to be able to go, yes, this is beautiful, part of an infinite body of knowledge, but that in this dimension and in this reality has a very real impact and has a very real consequence in terms of like, here it's commodified, but yet in the country where this wisdom body came out of the earth into the people born there, do not even have access to some of the shit we have access to here, that people are getting paid crazy ass money and having a great life and living. And so for me, it's like, it's important to be able to hold, and I believe in our capacity to do that because we're multi-sensorial humans, our capacity to hold for the multiplicity of this beautiful spiritual expression that is connected to a greater picture that everybody, and simultaneously has all these expressions. And that to teach us to engage in these things from a consciousness of not just, I'm going to grab because this looks like a great 15-minute thing for me to self-care in, without the consciousness of the impact, socioeconomic impact for the people who actually bled and have died just to be channels for that wisdom. So for me,
just
there's
so
this
that we
piece
could
of
have
like,
a coloring book in the grocery store.
Right. So I think so, and to say that it's never but.
Yeah, it's both and.
Yes.
Always, right? And our capacity to be able to inhabit that is our capacity to experience grief and love, to experience loss and longing, right? And so I think to the point that I think they're all doorways, but I also have this like strong resonance with this idea of every aspect of there are practices that our ancestors engaged in that were deeply connective, that live inside of you. You have no idea why you're knitting, but yet you come from a long lineage of weavers. You have no idea why the fuck you like painting or creating, but yet it is something that's been activated, an expression of your great somebody. And this is to me the power of the knowingness. And it's also the power of having practitioners like P show up when we show up in these containers and we're like, okay, so here's the frequency I am here to pull out. Take what activates, but then walk your journey. You have what you need built in, right? Genetically and in all the ways, energetically built in to sustain who you are as a unique alchemy. And that's much more sustainable than me going and trying to put on your clothes right now. Right? I mean, I could start there. We look cute, but then I got to figure out how I'm gonna rock it my way. And that's what I'm speaking to, this relationship to coming back to yourself and being like, oh, I'm going to handle these because we also live in this dimension as well. Right. Yeah. And we have the ability to respond. So, but yes to all the things, and simultaneously always and.
Cool.
Thank you for being so grounded in that truth and in your work, because it's heavy to hold and to take up the space that is necessary to present that is just a form of strength. So with Lauren and I here being, very lofty in our potentially bypassy imaging of things, I think it's really important that you're here to bring it back down to the space that also exists that Lauren and I don't necessarily have access to. So thank you for holding that down.
Yeah. And I think that, right, like what we're talking about when we're even talking about like, how do we feel after coming out of this? Like, what is happening? Well, what is happening is the integration. what is happening is exactly what we're talking about. Like, how do we live in this expression of reality from that deep anchored place of, this is why we timeline jump. We timeline jump to immediately step into the deeper access of that knowing.
Mm-hmm.
Because in that place, and and P's like our guide in that, we've had other guides showing up all over the place, right? Yeah. It's like, because everything is pointing back to that center. Everything is pointing back to the knowing that already exists inside of you. And when we are able to understand that, it becomes less about grabbing outside, and it becomes more about like, here I am, my season of life has changed. How do I connect with myself now? Mm-hmm. Who am I now? Where am I now? Right? Like all of that drops you back into your core of saying, what do I need
for
now?
a sec on the dropping back into the core, because I have a very full bladder and it's distracting me from really paying attention to everything. So I'm going to just mute my mic, but you guys can go on and I'll come right back.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I am okay. I'm going to say something to get it out of me so that I can move on from it. Because I'm like supremely triggered at the moment by what Shawna said. There's an excellent chance that this is going to come across as ignorant. And so I'm just going to let myself be honest and know that I'm not trying to project this onto anything. But just that in the whiteness, and I not that I will probably cut this part out, but I just am going to say this, that like there are different experiences of whiteness, and there are different lineages and heritages and all of that kind of thing. And in the decolonization journey and process and stuff like that, like they're not all the same. And like like I'm literally here in the land that my family came from, trying to find my own relationship to land and trying to find my own relationship to my literal ancestors and the energetic ancestors, and coming into that place of knowing. And like my family does have traditions, and my family does have lineage and a sense of place in Canada where we have ended up. And bridging those is really fucking important to me. Bridging the historic aspect and the current aspect. And while I don't understand firsthand the perspective of having a non-white body in predominantly white spaces, and I don't understand the lived experience of all of the baggage that comes along with that, the journey in decolonization is important for everyone, and it comes about in different ways and different processes. And I really didn't like being spoken for in that, because I feel like I'm on a journey of coming into that knowing on my own. And so I just want to be able to own that and say that for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Did you just want to say it, or do you want to unpack it a little bit? Like, did you want to say it and move on?
I am happy to, because I don't, like, if you guys have stuff you want to add on to that, I'm happy to unpack it. And I don't need to, because I am confident in the journey that I'm on with it. And so I'm happy to just like get it out of my system and carry on, because I know that I don't need to center myself in this. This is not the reason we're here today. It just bugged me and I wanted to like let it out. And so because that fun little mix of complex trauma of like not being able to speak up for myself, and so just using the moment to like do that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I know that I'm not solving world peace here or anything like that. And I don't need to be the center of attention. I just wanted to be able to honor what was coming up for myself. And if you guys want to riff on it, we totally can.
Can I expand a little bit on where my comment came from?
Sure.
Okay. It may not have been heard this way, but in my head, I said, we may not necessarily know where our heritage comes from because of our white skin. And that was me probably not obvious enough, not grouping you into just being white skinned like everybody else. Because I don't know your culture. I don't know your heritage. I don't know your experience with your white skin. For me, I don't know where I come from. And the guy I married brought up one day, like, being in Canada, we don't know enough about the original people and the original cultures that came from the land of Canada. Like, so if we're going to call ourselves like white-skinned Canadians, where does that connect us to our land? And I've thought about that a lot since the last couple of years that he said that. And I personally don't have a connection to any land. And so I don't have my own, I don't have cultural permission to use any set of symbols because I don't know where I belong to. So I think I was relating to your comment when you said something like, I think it's easy for us to bypass the truth of honoring the culture of the symbols. I was just speaking to that. Like, I don't know. I don't have a culture of symbols. So my only option is to pick and choose from other places. And then test it on my own knowing. So I know race is so sensitive. Thank you for telling me that I hit a button, because some people care, some people don't. So I appreciate that. And that's just a little bit more of where I was coming from. I don't group you into white people because you have white skin. Thank you.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah. What you're saying makes sense.
Thanks.
Well, and I think this is part of the complexity of our multidimensional embodiment, right? Also the complexity of timelines, the complexity of severance, right? Where so much of many of our experiences include the narrative of disconnection, right? Like they include these things that are they're very painful. And again, I believe in our capacity to be with all the pieces, to talk about the magical things, to talk about all the, like, those multidimensional pieces while simultaneously honoring this very embodied element and the very, this level of many realities and yet still very honed ones, right? Because each country has their own experience of what is real, right? It's all the things. And I think there's space for all the things without it being, or rather meaning that I often in trainings, I'm like, okay, difference is not division, right? And often enough, because of the way difference has been, juxtaposed, it tends to create this fear of division, it's like, oh, if I'm different, that's being divisive. And I think that, and what I love to witness, to the point that we're all here having a conversation, we met in a course led by a human who actually embodies a different ethnic identity, right? And a skin color. And yet the container is fluid enough to move through all those things without P or anybody else, and I don't want to speak for her, anybody, but any abandoning ourselves and the earth that we are, right? And that's how I see us as humans, like we talk about the element of air a lot, right? That's thought, that's all the magic, like this matrixy, energetic stuff. And we can also talk about what it means to be earth, the alchemy of all those things in this expression, our history and our present and what is considered a future, because time is not linear. It's all timeline jumping, right? It's all of these things. And I think that that can only support the actual intention of being embodied, of returning us to ourselves. Because we're saying also these stories of pain, these stories of separation are part of what we're shifting, both in a very like mental, energetic, and physical. That's why we do all this body shit, right? Is because we're moving the energy to create space for what can be new. And so I think all roads lead back to home. And simultaneously, right, we get to talk about the pieces that are challenging. They feel very dense. Most often people run away from them because they feel so dense. And yet there's so much power in the witnessing, in the honoring, in the spaces that we can co-create in. So I think we manage that moment quite fucking amazingly, if I say so myself.
That's great. That's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like how I mean, not to toot my own horn here, but we were able to have that level of conversation because I brought up the mandala coloring book in the grocery store. And it did what it was supposed to do. We just got a lot out of that stupid little fucking coloring book at the grocery store. That's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's, to your point, Angelique, where we need to, I think we just played out how we need to be using those symbols to not just throw it in casually in conversation, but actually use it to work through things and be better, grow.
Yeah. And also the beauty of, to the point you were making, Shawna, the idea of like, I recently did a podcast on my Substack about this, like right timing, what it means for us to connect with things in our lives that bring us back to ourselves, that cause a remembering that actually cannot be articulated, but yet it is felt deeply and it's deeply transformative, right? And I think that one of the things that I love about going through and the workshop that we attended, like, that was a gift from my eldest for my birthday. I recently turned 47 and they were like, Mom, because they've been working with me for a minute. They're like, Mom, do you want to? And because I've been in my own evolution and transition and finding myself in that thing. And for me, it's such a lovely thing of when you come across something, the right timing of it, so that what it does is it energetically sets you off into you're right, like you're like hosting that flow, which you were talking about earlier, Lauren, in terms of like, being in that kind of like matrixy idea, right? Or even technology being this container, showing us what's actually possible when we hit this one edge and the code entirely changes and creates an entirely different experience. And then we hit another thing, right? But that we can actually, and this is what I think, what I love about P's, like, she's like, all right, measure the image of the thing. Not true, almost true, can't be, true, very true, because this idea of being able to sit with your body and be like, okay, where is it? Where is the resonance where the frequency is actually linking up and connecting? And how can I support the expansion around that so I can be fully myself? So I can show up fully in this iteration, because it's not even permanent or forever, right? It's who you are being right now. And so for me, there's a lot of like, I love the way that container kind of holds for this. Like, okay, you're coming. This is a moment in time. You're about to jump the fuck to the next one. How can you connect to the feeling in your body, your inner knowing? So when you're out of the container, you're in that expression. You're operating from it, right? And so for me, there's like all of these, like every time we hit that, boom, we're on to the, wherever the next place is. And that integration happens as a practice and a process, not an outcome. And that the more fully ourselves we become, which is deconditioning from our conditioning and all of the pieces, the more powerful frequency we inhabit, the more peace we actually experience in our bodies and our minds, not separate. Right. And to me, that's the beauty of like coming across different containers and really being able to say, okay, this is inspiring me in this way, but this is also how it lives in my body. Now I go and I timeline jump in another way, right? That's accessible to me and the way my body and my dimensions operate. That shit is fucking sexy as shit. And so that to me is what makes it so exciting.
Yeah. How you doing, Lauren?
Good. There's a whole flow of like coming back into that experience and embodiment. And, you know, one of the things that has been coming up for me in the last few days here is that like P has the formal process of the timeline jump, which is like a guided meditation exercise, that kind of thing. And there's been so many times where I've realized in the last few days that like there are these timeline jumps happen literally in moments as we walk through life. Like there's also this like shedding of skin and stuff that happens literally from one step to the next. That when you shine your light of attention on something, and that alchemical process, like what you were saying of like our experience is truly fucking magic, because you allow yourself to unhitch from the things which have been preventing your full embodiment of your knowledge and wisdom. And you allow yourself to wriggle free of the mental snares you have concocted for yourself. And so then coming back into that remembrance, that true remembrance of who you are, you know, it's great. It's great being able to walk through these different containers and, you know, be able to move through, because those timeline jumps happen so quickly and almost like as you least expect them.
Yes.
Because there's been so many times in the last 2 weeks where I'm like, oh man, I really need to do it, like the guided meditation, like timeline jump today. I really need to do this. And then 16 things happen and I was like, oh shit, it's the end of the day. I haven't done this. And it's like, whoops. But then when I take stock of my day, I'm like, oh, I did 5 just playing with the dog. Like,
right.
Yeah.
I used to notice, I don't know how much y'all know Jessa Reed, but she talks a lot about a 2-cup method for manifestation, where like 1 cup, you have the things that you don't want anymore. And then the other cup, you have the things that you do want, and like you dump 1, drink 1, whatever. I've never actually done it, but I've thought about doing it. And I think it was probably 3 times where I just imagined myself doing the 2-cup method. And then the thing I wanted to shift actually shifted in front of me. I didn't have to physically do the thing in order to experience the result of the timeline shifting. So I'm 100% with you on that one. I think that some of the questions that P asks in terms of like, how do you know when you're valuing yourself? Or how will you know when you're playing this character? Sometimes I have a hard time answering that because I am playing the character. And so I've now decided to make meaning of the fact that when I don't know how I'm playing the character, that must mean that I'm playing the character. Like, cause it's hard to watch yourself from inside yourself. You have to step outside yourself. And so it's like telling me that, no, I'm the character. You've done the jump. You're doing the things. And I think that timeline travel or time travel in general, we're doing that. And that's a little mind blowing to me, because within, I guess, the last week, I've experienced 2 different methods of time travel, one being P's meditation method, and next being Lauren's whatever the fuck she did to me method. And we were just
we had a separate meeting, like just the 2 of us, and I did a NLP technique on her.
And I thought I was just coming in to talk about podcast equipment and that she was going to help me with mics and stuff, but she came just ready to do work. And I let it happen because I guess I'm an easy little whore like that. No, but I just like literally, she's like, hey, can we do this thing? And I'm like, all right. And I took myself into my childhood. I did not intend to go where I went. That's just what happened. I let myself flow with Lauren's prompts and was just in tears. Like, I was like, taste the gooey, salty snot that's dripping into your lip right now. I was just puking out my face. And I did not expect to have that time travel moment in that moment. And then probably at least 2 days, what it was, maybe even just 3 or 4 days ago, but for at least the 2 days after that, I didn't know where I was. Like I was experiencing so many different feelings that was so much different than the day before. And I was trying to find meaning for it, trying to find my place. And I was really taking in the fact that I just time traveled. Like, Shawna, give yourself a minute. Like, you went some space. There's probably like jet lag of some sort related to that kind of time travel. So give yourself a fucking minute. And what it's really showing me is that we are living those Jetson dreams of ours. And I think that is one of the coolest things that I've been able to gain from P's processes. It's not so much the outcomes of me literally having the things I imagine happen in front of me, but it's the, oh my God, we're time traveling. Holy shit. Like, this is just a normal part of our lives now. We are just time travelers. And then finding, like, normalizing that. That's been really fun. And hey, I don't know, shameless plug, if you want to do some crazy time travel shit with Lauren, she can do that too. Just go to her website and click time travel with Lauren. She'll have it up there in a couple days.
It's on the services page. It's already there.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay, listening to you say that, I literally something just clicked for me so hard. Speaking of in the moment timeline jumps, because it would just clicked and kind of unhooked and unraveled for me is this like deep-seated need for protectiveness. That was one of the things in the last few days that I've noticed. I have been acting from a unconscious need to protect, particularly when it comes to my like biological family.
Protect yourself or protect others?
Protect others
or
in
both.
my biological family, which is complex. And but that and understanding that other people are always a reflection for what's going on inside of you. And so understanding that my desire to protect these other people is a desire to protect a part of myself. And really it just like fucking clicked, that whole like triggeredness and protectiveness over my own family and my own lineage and my own like that kind of thing was this need to protect and validate myself. So like, thank you for that. Thank you. Because I can let that go and I can just let myself be fucking me. And
I fucking love you.
Right? Because then there's that multi-dimensionality, that multi-channel of like, yes, this stuff exists and it doesn't need to be protected in order to be valid and in order to be whatever. It just gets to be through the container of you, through the embodiment of you. And that's more fun. Isn't that more exciting? Isn't that more sexy anyway?
This is how create your dream job shows up in your everyday life. When you decide that I'm going to be this person now, and then you act like this person, and then you are this person. And, you know, half an hour ago, you said, I might delete this. And now you're like, I just had like a massive revelation. Like, that is how P's work can impact you on your everyday life, because you are almost forcing yourself to show up as the person you said you were going to show up as.
Oh, yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Go us.
Hey, any famous last words? Any last thoughts? Angelique.
It's that time already.
For the recording, at least.
Oh yeah, it has a limit.
Yeah, no,
only because I have yet to publish an episode over an hour and 22 minutes. And I don't know about anybody else's attention span, but mine kind of caps around there when I'm listening to things or producing. I could fucking jam for
give me a 3-hour podcast.
Jam for 10 hours on this. I know. Okay, so like you made the comment when we met in P's container that I'm going to be the Joe Rogan of Canada, the female Joe Rogan of Canada, or something like that. Which like
sounds like something I say.
Fucking, I have fewer compliments have touched my heart in the way that one did. Because I know this is going to be such an unpopular opinion, but I fucking love Joe Rogan because I love the conversations he has on his podcast. The way that he goes about conversing and interviewing, but it's not an interview. It feels like you're just fucking smoking a blunt in the back of their house. Like I fucking love it. Like personal views aside, like he is a master in that. And I love that. And so I totally fucking forgot what that related to. Anyway, completely forgot why I thought of that.
Because our limit is an hour and 22 minutes. And I was like, I can listen to it. Yeah.
Because he puts out 3-hour interviews on the fucking regular. And yes, there is part of me that like this needs to be a 3-hour conversation. Because like I don't know if I'm over the aliens part that we were discussing earlier that didn't get recorded properly because I didn't hit record when I knew I should have as soon as we were all on the line.
That's knowing.
By mistake.
That's how you find knowing.
It is. Because I have learned in doing this podcast that you get the best recordings from people when you hit record on the fly and you just like let everybody ease into it without really knowing. But it's also, I struggle a little bit because that seems a little low-key unethical. Like that's like people know when they're being recorded, but also like you came on here to be recorded, so like you should know that you're going to be recorded.
So put it in the fine print of your little booklet saying that as soon as you show up on camera, we are recording.
Ooh, that's a
and
good
if
call.
we forget about
that's
it, then we forget about it. But hey, you told us.
That's a really good call. Because this has happened to me one other time where I hit the record button on the sly and fucking magic happened before I acknowledged that we were recording. And I really wanted to publish it. I did end up publishing it. I did have a conversation with everybody who was on that episode to say, I really want to publish this. Are you okay with this? And they both gave consent and that kind of thing. So it was all consensual. But that's a good conversation to have with people.
You know what? I got to be honest. Some of my favorite podcasts that I listen to start mid-conversation. There's no necessarily, hey, I'm here today with so-and-so and so-and-so, and this is what we're going to talk about. It just like picks up. And then the intro comes 20 minutes later. But I love just feeling like I just walked into a room with people talking and I'm a fly on the wall.
I know I've been thinking about how I'm going to edit this as we've been talking, and I'm like, I think it's staying as is.
That's what last night when I was editing the audio that I'm putting out, Beyond Words, The Power of Knowing, I was like, this shit is like 90 minutes. I was like, well, I could ride. I could do it. I was like, let me just split this in a two-part piece so that, because my thing is like, when you're listening to something that's really long, I'm like, when it's really, when it hits a minute, I have to pause. And then if I press the wrong button, it fucks my shit up. And then I'm pissed because I'm like, where was that at? And so now I'm like, okay, that's the least I can do is like, I'll split. And so now it's like 2 parts, which is fine. But my thing is like, there's no vibe is vibe. And it is so bananas, right? To be like, and as a neurodivergent person, I'm like, if I don't press record now, I may just forget.
I'm going to forget.
Okay, the nice thing about this software is that it like blares warnings at you if you're not recording. It's like actually really fucking annoying. I've tested it once and it's like every 2 minutes, you're not recording. And it's like, well, thank you. I know.
Why are you here if you're not recording?
Yes, literally.
Well, there you go.
But yeah.
You just gotta listen to the algorithm and hit record immediately.
But no, I will do that. I wish I had that first little bit of that conversation because, like,
well, now you have to go and listen to Duncan Trussell's thing and do your research on Lambda, and then we come back for another Lambda podcast
and do like a full conversation.
I can do it.
I'm fucking so in. I'm so in because I like have literally not been wanting to like chime in on the AI conversation because so many people are. They're like, it's either the like AI stealing our jobs or like you just need to work harder and then AI won't be a threat to you. And it's like,
that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about sentience.
So I know. So like there's a different conversation that I want to have about AI that is not that is not part of that like capitalist work structure. But anyway. Anyways, so are there any famous last words? Like for realsies?
Dogs are cute. Get a dog.
Yeah. My dog literally just came over. She's not my dog, but the dog that I'm taking care of literally just came over to say hi. So this is my new tattoo.
She's my dog.
That's
Speaking of Scottish lineage, this is a Pictish design done by Marley Sesford in Edinburgh.
What's the meaning?
That is gorgeous.
So the symbol is a double crescent, which was present in Pictish carvings. And nobody knows what it actually symbolizes because the Pictish people couldn't write. They only had other cultures, such as the Romans, write about them. And so this is an oral tradition that was lost. However, this artist, Marley Sesford, who started tattooing as a traditional tattooist and then found this whole realm of Pictish symbols and has made his art in like reviving and revisioning the meaning behind these Scottish tribal symbols from this Pictish culture. He has added his own artistry and everything to it. So the original shape is this double crescent that's like just two fucking lines carved in a rock. And then he adds like different cultures and different writings and stuff like that talk about the swirls and the circles and the symmetry in the Pictish designs. And so he's developed things from there. So he drew this one for me because I was telling him about how being in Scotland now has been such a fucking reclamation for me. And like the forest near here has been like, oh my fucking God. I didn't realize I wasn't speaking the language of a forest that felt natural to me. I didn't realize I wasn't speaking the language of forest that felt natural to me until I got to this forest and felt the layers and felt the age and felt the land and felt the water in the air and felt the fucking birds and felt all the fucking buildings and the ruins and the brick and the shit and all of the stuff. I didn't realize until I got here that this is the language of the forest that I've been speaking.
So I don't know if we still have time, but you did do a tree speaking course I heard on one of your podcasts. So is that kind of what you're referring to, where like you were taught a language and then you realize now in this forest? No. Okay.
So
cool.
So yes, I have done a course called Celtic Healing Reiki, and it's a little bit of a misnomer. It uses the Celtic symbols. It's not like your usual, if you were to Google runes and like the popular, like there's one rune for one letter of the alphabet kind of rune. That's kind of a fucking Disneyland version of runes. But there is a older version of runes that comes from Celtic people and comes from like the Scottish land and that kind of thing that the runes are slightly different. And so there's a lineage of healing modalities that come out of this, that the runes all correspond to trees and the spirits in trees. And so you tap into the energy and vibration of the tree's healing energy using the rune as your portal or gateway into that. But once you know the rune, once you know the vibe of the tree, I can be like oak and it's here. And I don't need to like draw the symbol and like do the thing in order to make it happen. Right. I know how to get on the line with the tree. Now, that is one thing that was a very intentional course that I took and was like for the purpose of healing, and it was fucking amazing and I loved it and it was great. However, what I'm talking about when I mean I didn't realize I wasn't speaking my language of the forest, is that I have known for, I don't know, many years, that feeling when you walk into a forest and you just feel a tree, or that feeling when you lay on the ground and you can hear the mycelium talking, or the feeling of when you're walking down a forest path and you feel the animal move in the woods because you feel the air pressure change before you hear the twig snap. And like stuff like that. That to me is the language of a forest. And so because I see in binary code, oftentimes I am interacting with a visual language of to where I see the vibration that the tree is operating at. Because even though we know oak trees have a particular level that they're speaking at, the same way that like the Facebook URL is facebook.com. But if I wanted to go to your direct profile, I would do facebook.com/blah, blah. So like, I know oak trees are going to exist at oaktree.com. But if I want to talk to this oak tree, I'm going to put in oaktree.com/blah, blah, blah. And so walking through a forest in Canada, for instance, the binary code is not complex. The forests that exist in a lot of the areas that I was in the prairies are new because for a couple of reasons. One, a lot of the forests are ripped out to put in farmland. And two, forests are less popular or less common in the prairies because they were prairies. And so a lot of the fucking trees that are there are man planted and were like brought in to create parks and create greenlands that resembled what was accepted for Greenland at the time that it was made. Right. And as opposed to just understanding that it's the fucking prairies and like wide open grass is nature. Right. And so being in Canada and walking through a forest, there's a very particular language to it because the types of trees that show up and the depths of trees and the intention of how the trees arrived there and what kind of underbrush also has like a very specific vibe. It's like a harmony in motherfucking music. So like if I was to play you a triad in like C major, that's like great, cool, that's boring. Thanks for showing up. That's boring. But if so in my right hand, I'm playing a simple melody, like fucking chopsticks. I don't know. I'm going to play a simple chopsticks melody on my right hand. But when I start with my left hand, then bringing in the bass, that's like the underbrush feeling, right? Like that's your fucking meat and potatoes of a forest is actually the underbrush and the insects and like the rot and the others, the mycelium and stuff that happens on a different layer. And so then you start doing like arpeggios and stuff. So like in Canada, the forest very much sounds like chopsticks with the right hand. And maybe they're like, like something simple on the left hand. But coming here, it's like fucking chopping every day because the ivy on the underbrush is like fucking bigger than some of the actual trees in here. And I didn't realize how much the like layering of a forest was important because I feel like in Canada, a lot of the regrowth and a lot of the like conservation stuff that has been done is done. And I don't know this other than from anything what the forest has told me, but it feels like it's been done from an aesthetic perspective. Like we want birch trees here because they're pretty. And we want these trees over here because we're pretty. Because like I've been in forests in Manitoba. There's Birds Hill Park. It's fucking alien magic land. If you want to go to a fucking like fucking intergalactic theme park, you go to fucking Birds Hill Park near Winnipeg, Manitoba. That is some like, there's some like Area 59 shit
In
happening there
Manitoba.
that nobody is talking about.
Nobody talks about Manitoba, period.
No, yes, that's pretty fucking accurate. That's pretty fucking accurate. And so, there's a different language to it. And so while the stuff in Canada is very interesting, it's very linear. Mm-hmm. It's very one-dimensional. I'm sorry, baby trees in Canada. I'm sorry. But like there's it's very linear, it's very methodical. Even when
you can drive down the highways and see the lines of the trees like planted more. Yeah.
Yeah, and like even when you get into areas where it's not like a line planted, like a man-made thing, you can still feel the right. There's a different feeling to it, and I know that the place that I'm referring to here in Scotland that I'm nearby is Camo Estate in Edinburgh, and so I know that there's large areas of this thing too that have also been replanted or planted by man, or have been specifically like done as like a beauty thing instead of a natural habitat kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But there's just something in the soil. There's just something in the hills that hits different, that sings different. Because like when I was in Canada, I traveled over to Muskoka, which is 4 hours north of Toronto, to do a shamanic retreat there, which was a great experience. But I got in those hills and I got in the Canadian Shield and I was like, oh, this is not my land. These are not my trees. Like I could see the language and I could see the vibration and I could hear the language of the forest happening there. And it was like it was watching me because could literally also see the spirits of the Iroquois that were still around. And you could literally see the spirits of the Iroquois being like they're just watching. There wasn't like a defensiveness on guard, but it was like this is our land and you are not from here. Like kind of thing. And so it was just so interesting being there because in the Canadian Shield and the way everything like bounced off the rock and all of that, the song was beautiful. And it was like listening to Greek. Like it was just not my language. And even going out to BC, of course, BC is prolific for their hiking trails and is like notorious around the world for all the hiking in the forest and that kind of thing. Felt nice. Felt cute. I get why people are drawn to it en masse, but like could take it or leave it. And then coming here, it was just like, plant me with this tree.
Right. I love that. Mm-hmm. I love that stuff always. Like when I'm notoriously considered a tree hugger, but it has everything to do with like for the forest and mountains it's just my people. Like I'm made of that stuff. But there's this way, I love the way you're describing it because I think it's such an important nuance to when you find the inhabitation of a frequency that's home. Mm-hmm. That feels like skin to you, that feels like you can hear it and understand it clearly. And to me, that's just such a sacred thing and so powerful because of what it's like that perfect. It's the perfect alchemy, right? It's like you came home and it embraces you, envelops you, and fucking activates some next level shit.
Oh my God, has it ever activated some next level shit? And it's so funny. People here kept being like, oh, where are you going today? Like, are you going to go see this? You're going to go see that? And I'm like, no, I'm staying home. I'm going in the forest, and I'm coming home, and I'm writing, and I'm crying, and that's it. And they're like, you came all this way? And it's like, and? Like, this is where I needed to be. This is exactly where I needed to be. Like, I never intended to end up here. I never intended to come to Edinburgh, and I've been here for a month. And like,
right.
It's so wild. It's so wild. And then, like to find this kind of connection here was just something you can't plan for.
Yeah, I love it. And I think there's these pieces of like, just the way that, just the unifying feeling of like, there's this piece that was like, you can't quite articulate or put like a pin on it. Like, it's like you hear something or you hear the language of something and you can recognize it, but there's nothing like the feeling of like hearing, like literally you understand the language and vibrationally it is moving through you like code. For me, I'm like, I'm a ham about that. One of my practices is like, I'll go to the local park here, as close as it's going to get. And I'll like, it's like they have like trails and I'll take off my shoes and I'm the person walking through barefoot and just being, just listening, asking, consensually engaging in an environment that is actually not right, like aligned in that way. And so being able to also sense the different texture energetically of it while still powerfully nurturing and all the good things. And still nothing like when I go to Puerto Rico and I go home and I'm walking and I'm like, oh, right. I know the smell. I know the scent. It's home. Like the minute I get there, everything and between the humans and the land itself, the vibration actually amplifies the fuck out of my own vibration, right? Because it's like, it's a tuning fork for you to be speaking your language. And I'm like, yes, bitch, I'm gonna lay out here. I'm just gonna lay out. Don't talk to me. I'm just gonna be on the ground laid out because I'm bonding. I'm bonding. Right? And just this is so powerful. It's so powerful. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I love that.
You're welcome. To take it to another level, I had a dream very shortly before I came up here. I had my plane tickets booked to Europe, but I hadn't left yet. I had this dream where I was traveling, and in the dream I was in India, is where I had labeled it as, and I was walking through trying to find a place to eat, and then decided to go off on this one path, and I accidentally went out of town, and I was like, oh, dang, I gotta get back around to town. And so I turned around down this road, and I realized that there was kind of this like huge ravine, and town was on the other end of this ravine, and I could either go the long road back that I had come to go to the town, or in my dreams, I have this ability. It often in real life, I forget that I don't have this ability in waking life. Because in dreams, I have this ability to like jump fly. It's like these big, you jump, but it's this like big, floaty, beautiful, graceful. You're kind of flying, you're kind of jumping. Generally, I jump about 10 feet in the air and I can go about 30 feet or 60 feet long with one of these floaty jumps. And so, and nobody else in my dreams is really able to do this. I'm like, I consciously, anyways, it's a fun.
Have you practiced? Have you spent years of your life practicing that jumping skill in your dreams? Because I have. I know exactly what you're talking about.
It kind of,
and I didn't know how to do it right away.
It kind of happened by accident a few times in dreams, and then I realized that I was controlling it, and I was like, oh, well, duh, obviously. And then, like I said, it's sometimes I literally forget that I don't have the ability in waking life, because I'll like go to kick off, instead of going down all the stairs, I like go to kick off to like jump down the stairs, and then I'm like, oh, wait a second, gravity is so real, and it's like, whoops. No, it's interesting. Anyways, so in this dream, I had gone out of town and there was this big ravine. And like I said, 10 feet in the air, maybe 50 feet out is like the max. But like generally I'm doing this over flat ground and I'm just able to like leapfrog flat ground or like a staircase and stuff like that on with these jumps. But looking at this, it was like a ravine. It was like between two mountains, very green mountains. Like these weren't like rocky mountains or anything. But I wanted to get back to town and I was like, fuck it, we're gonna jump this. And so I just like jumped one-legged off the path. And then all of a sudden I had this like red yoga ball that I was holding on to like help me float extra more, but I held it in this really dumb way. Anyways, and so I like floated down over through this ravine and just like very gracefully, gently landed at kind of the other side of this ravine. And where I landed was right in the middle of a small group of people being given a lesson on astrology. And I was like, oh, great, I'm going to stick around and like hang out and be the teacher's assistant in this class. Like, this is fun. This is cute. What a cute little moment. And I like asked the teacher if I could hang around and she was like, yeah, for sure. And so then we like all walked back to town together, like discussing astrology and discussing whatever. And then I went and found my thing to eat. And so I got then I got to Edinburgh proper in real life, in my waking life. And then
did you jump?
Did I jump in my waking life to Edinburgh? I wish. I wish. Got to Edinburgh, got to the park, and one day took a path going off in like a weird direction because there's paths all over the place because there's no such thing as trespassing in the UK. And so I went off this one path, came over this hill that I kind of didn't really know existed, came over this hill and fucking was like, bam, in this dream, was like looking at the ravine from this dream, but in real life. And it's happened a couple different places in Edinburgh where like the city of Edinburgh is built among 7 hills, the same way that Rome was built between 7 hills. Isn't that fucking amazing? Anyways. And so the hills of Edinburgh are this place that I had this dream. And it's fucking so, that dream was really, really, really potent and like
I just
for like 3 days.
Heard like 7 chakras too. And I wasn't going to say it, but then I remembered that your dream was in India.
Yeah. That's cool.
The Bible talks about the 7 devils as well. And to me, that's, the Bible's version of chakras, of energy points. But of course, they would term it as a devil because you don't want to go in and find your own source of God. But yeah, the 7 devils.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. Can I ask a question about how you normally land when you're in those dreams?
Yeah.
This time you had a ball.
This time I had a ball. I have never ever had a ball before, but this was like a really fucking massive jump. Like we're like 100 feet of elevation, and
I feel like
200 or 300 feet long. Like it was a huge.
Yeah. Like whatever that ball
and,
symbolizes for you, it's symbolizing you being able to go further and farther than you ever thought you could before.
Yeah.
With grace and support and lightness. And it's red, so you're still rooted to the ground. So fucking cool. So fucking cool, man.
Thank you. And so
good dreaming.
I've had this a few times where I have dreams. I had a recurring dream and I ended up in Calgary walking into the building that I had dreamed about consistently for like 6 months. And I knew what the building's layout was. I knew where the office was that I had to go to. I like knew how to get around because I had dreamt about it so much. That was like way more mind blowing.
Put that on the future podcast. One about dreams.
Oh, good call. That's a super good call. I want to be cognizant of Angelique getting to work.
I was thinking about that too.
At the half hour.
Yeah.
But I landing in the dreams, I feel the pressure going up. I feel the pressure coming down. And usually it's just like what movie is that from?
And you feel the pressure coming down.
Yeah. There's like it's like the air pressure changes when I'm coming down.
But this one wasn't that hard of a come down. It was a float down.
Correct. Pretty much the whole thing was downward momentum, right? Like pretty much the whole thing was landing at that jump. It was a very small kickoff with a very big landing. But typically it's very equal kickoff and landing, typically in dreams. But the landing, it's kind of just like a 1-2 land, like 1 foot lands first and then you kind of brace at the second and then you just carry on. Usually I'll jump right away again. But yeah.
Do you ever work with your dreams? I have one of my teachers where I got my ordination from, my Kohenet. I use priestess because it's the English translation. Kohenet is the Hebrew word for priestess.
Okay.
My practice is in Earth-based Judaism. And so one of Rabbi Jill Hammer just not long ago put out a book on working with dreams and like actually actively, and to me, I think that, some people have like the hardware to actually work within their dreams to create and shift and move. And so I'm curious, have you attempted any of that work with your dreams? Because it seems like your dreams are not just creating, but also foretelling.
Yes, I have very prophetic dreams, and I have worked on different levels. So there was a long phase of my life in like when I was 2016 to 2018, inclusive, where I had no dreams. It was black all night. And so then I started keeping a dream journal in late 2018, early 2019 to help foster them. And that really did start to help bring it back. And so after that, I only kept a dream journal for a few months, but then there are some of these like recurring themes in my dreams, like the jumping, for instance, where I do work within the dreams to develop a thing. I don't have a strict practice other than that. There's themes that I engage with. One thing that fucking comes up so used to. Thank God I moved out of this phase. Bathrooms came up all the fucking time. I almost never have nightmares, but there's a couple of bathroom layouts that my brain has presented to me that give me sweats because they are never ending bathrooms. And and being in London a few weeks ago, like literally the bathrooms of my nightmares, in all the basements of all the gross little, but yes. But hearing you say that about the dream practices and stuff like that, there is definitely untapped potential there to do more magic and more intentional work and stuff like that with fucking dreams.
Yeah. I operate in a very similar way. In my dreaming, there are things. The apartment I lived in a year ago, I actually dreamt about maybe 7 years ago. And I had no idea. Had you told me then that the dream was a foretelling of where I would not have, I was like, what the fuck?
Yes.
Right? I was like,
yes.
Holy shit. Right. So my, a lot of my medicine has come through to me in my dreams, like snake medicine, owl medicine, right? Like ever since I was a kid, there's a lot there, and they're all prophetic in nature. But when I learned to just, the idea of cultivating a deeper relationship, because obviously for me, there was this piece where I recognized that in my dream state, there's so much happening and so much being laced that's possibly the entryway for me to do a different type of work that cannot be like it. Well, it's just a certain type of container that can go into the root of something, because the dream, everything is symbolism, right? And so I feel like it would be interesting, which is what I love about, the teachers that have informed, and also my own relationship with like, oh, if I'm going through things, when I'm going to bed, am I like leaning into the intention that when I finally fall asleep, that in that space, I'm going to do the work, that in the active reality, right? So like authoring things from that place of inception.
Yes. Okay. So I 100% do that. I have learned Okay, so maybe I do more dream work than I was giving myself credit for.
Right.
Because there's two things. So one, there is often nights where I will go to sleep saying, yo, Archangel Raph or like Archangel Michael, like, can you please take care of this while I'm sleeping? There's been a lot of healing things since I've been in this house, that like little things that I'm like, I need you to take care of my shoulder for me while I'm sleeping, please. And I wake up and it's great and we're fine. However, the other thing that I have really been developing is when I'm descending into sleep, I started cluing into this because, you know, when you're falling asleep and you like there's images coming up, but you're not really asleep yet.
Yes.
But yet this happens to everybody. You think you trip over a set of stairs or you trip and fall over something, and there's that visceral sense of falling, and it like wakes you up instantly. Okay, so I used to get that like 4 or 5 times a night. And so, but then I finally clued into the fact that like, this is not a like fully dream and you're not fully awake. There's a separate state here to play in. And so I have really, really, really been playing with that lately. And I will set myself down in different scenarios to work through things. And not always, it's not always like situations that are happening in real life. Sometimes I'll choose a situation that's happening in real life, but I'm generally very careful with those so that I don't slip into my ego about the situation. And so oftentimes I'm literally just realizing this right now. If there's a situation in my waking life that I'm worried about or whatever, I'll follow the vibration of that situation into whatever representation the in-between state has for me. And then I'll work through it there as I'm falling asleep, and then let whatever happens as I'm sleeping happen. Because I'm generally kind of like setting an intention for the dark sleep phase and then working through something in the in-between sleep phase. And I have the part that I have not yet mastered. They're telling me I have. That's interesting. Is the waking up phase. Is that there's that in between phase yet again on the wake up.
Yes.
And that so far for me is a lot shorter. There's a very short window for that. And they keep telling me that I've mastered it. That's interesting. I didn't realize I had.
Well, it's probably why it's a short window.
That makes a lot of sense. Right. It's like Shawna was saying, where like, if you can't figure out what you're doing in the thing, you're probably just doing the thing.
Right. That the actual for it to just be.
Yeah.
So you already you already entered, did the work, and now you're arriving in the moment and in the day. I'm always fascinated about, one of the things I love to do as my own experience and my own practice, but also when I'm working with folks, is like just really unpacking their own internal language. Like, what are the access points, right? Is it the dream? Is it the create? Like, where is it that you can find that it's like, it hits, and it hits entirely different. And what's fascinating that in the years that I've been doing this, it's like, I love that it's so natural. People don't realize that that's what it is. Cause it's just so it's like, no, I just have dreams. Nah, heifer, you shit. You shit. It's a whole fucking like, I'm like, wait, can I'm like, pause. Can we just affirm that your shit has been coming for you? Right? Like, cause we're like, oh, I need to learn. No. Your shit has been coming for you. You've been working shit out in your dreams, rewriting the scripts. You've been doing a whole bunch of shit in that world that is actually what's shifting the reality you're embodying.
Totally.
Then that's your access. I'm like, that's your access point. You don't have to go do what somebody else is doing. You have right there, you know what I mean? It's like this realization, oh shit, that is your door where you can do some different type of work that for me, especially as an Aquarius, like, that the type of quantum movement that happens in the dream realm, I'm like, sign me the fuck up. Because it's different. It's a different inhabitation. So I love that. I love the texture of the noticing of your like inhabitant movement, right? This jumping off, this landing down, which sounds very like walking on the moon type of thing. That's slow.
Yes, it feels like that.
Right. Yeah. So excited.
That's cool. I appreciate you asking those questions because, like, yeah, I just needed to say that out loud to connect those dots. But it's interesting because I have like 2 streams of deja vu. There's the deja vu where I remember things that I have previously dreamt about, but I didn't remember the dream until I had the deja vu.
Yes.
And so I wake up in the morning of the actual dream and I'm like, oh, I had a dream last night. And there's nothing. There's nothing. I remember it for like 3 seconds and then it goes away. But then, yeah, the deja vu happens and it whatever. And I can see it. And then there's also deja vu where I have not previously dreamt about it. Often those are future deja vus. So I walk into the moment I will have deja vu about later. Because, like, I experience deja vu from both directions. And so okay, have you ever been in a ping pong moment of deja vu where you're, like, bouncing between, like, 4 or 5 or 6 different timelines from the past and the future and the present, but then you're in the present recognizing you're in the past and the future and the present. And so it's, like, standing in front of 2 mirrors and it keeps going and you're just like...
Usually in that moment, I'll stop, physically stop, and literally do this thing like
yes.
Yeah, I try to catch it. I'm like, where did it come from? Where is it going? What does it mean? Where am I now? And then it's gone. And then I'm like, no, come back. Like, you have something to tell me. But it's gone. And then I just have to keep walking.
But see, the thing is,
like,
I've done it in the past too. I know. I'd say I've had those moments too where I'm like, no, I need to know. But I don't even worry about it anymore. Because the fun thing is that I already know it's coming back around. I already know it's going to be there. Never mind the codes that you can watch it leave behind. But like you literally already know you're going to meet it again. That you're going to meet it again.
And I think that what I find myself doing is usually after I realize, I'm like, ping, 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 ping. Then I'm like, thank you for affirming.
Yes.
Because you could feel the multidimensional
exactly what
cross.
I was thinking.
Where you're like,
yeah.
All right. Okay. So thanks. Yeah.
I always feel like, I have arrived.
And you know, the cognitive details that allow you to articulate.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's just this and that's that knowing is so fucking different. It's different than all the it feels like you feel it in your body. Every piece is resonating at a frequency that is literally multidimensional.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, fuck this, man. I'm like, this shit is literally, I was just for a minute, I'll be like, this is so fucking dope, right? Because you can even notice it. So yeah, I love that.
For me, it's so peaceful and it like brings up the feeling of like, okay, so you know, in your car in the summer, the first time you turn the air conditioning on in the summer, and it like pumps the smell of the like dust and the air conditioner smell. There is something so fucking like comforting and wholesome and beautiful about that moment. Like you're on the road, you're in your car, you're in your place, and then there's like this nostalgic but like current smell of that like peace.
Yes.
And it's like that thank you for recognizing the moment feels like that, where you're like in the past and then nostalgia, but you're in the present. Because you're fucking
getting some shitty air conditioner air blown in your face.
But like, I don't know. That's always been.
I love it.
I always love that.
No, I do that. Like when the summer comes, that first, when you roll down your window and the air comes in, like those moments. And to me, they're the pieces, the texture of them are often this like, it's like a hybrid of familiarity, nostalgia, and then there's also like this tinge of like that this is a pinpoint, right? Yep. It's like there's something about this moment that's a pinpoint.
Oh my God. It kind of feels like how in Back to the Future they have to hit, 77 miles per hour in order to time travel.
Yes.
It feels like that, right? Like you have to hit the windows down at this degree in this sun. Like it feels like this is our predestined meetup point.
Yeah, that's
like, right? Like you're meeting yourself. It's a deja vu. It's like an analog deja vu. Oh my God. Yes. Did I just have an analog deja vu moment right now?
Yes. Yeah.
So as a Pisces, this has been thoroughly fulfilling to watch two Aquarians talk about dreaming. But no, for real, like it's because as Aquarians, you guys are very mental about things. So you're very it's easy for you to describe the processes of your dream experiences. And as a Pisces, I am constantly in a dream experience. So
right.
I
in the water world
can talk about the same things that you guys are talking about, but it's less of like an outer experience for me. It's like, yeah, this is always my life. And I am really enjoying like the technicalities that you two are coming out with when it comes to dream world shit. Yeah. Cool
I feel like and that's also like where the one audio that I did about right timing, because I was talking about that moment. It's time is whatever, the human construct of it, but there's this moment of the right. there's this moment of this right timing that it looks like it's so complete in itself that to fuck with it is almost an insult, right? So I was like talking about like your own right timing, where we as humans, we're conditioned to force, to push, to strive. But the way that becomes problematic is that all the frequency components are not yet in their ripe intersection for you to have this moment in which everything is everything is transformed. And then we try to do that to other folks. We're like, no, this is where you need to be at. And it doesn't work that way, because you have to honor that there's a right timing for them as well. So you have to release that. But for me, in the audio, what I was communicating is my Substack. I was communicating that moment that you don't have to plan for it, prep for, you don't have to do, and the moment will come. And when it comes, there is nothing like it. Whatever you were trying to work through before, in that moment, it is all clear. That's it. Right? Like in that moment, all the other times we're like, what this? What about that? What about this? What about that? In that moment, there's no what about anything. There's like, oh yes, right. It is, right. Thank you. Yes. Yes, it is. Thank you. Right? Like it's like, oh, the rightness of it, and I mean right as in whole and aligned in the intersections of frequency, is like, oh, you don't have to you don't have to motivate a person. You don't have to anything, because it all internally just shifts. And to me, I'm like, yo, right timing is everything. And it's worth knowing that thing will come to you when those things happen for you. And then fuck it. You're like loose. You're like, after that, you got to be careful with your magical ass, because you should be just aiming and shooting shit all over the place, right? Because you no longer there's a struggle. And I love that. I love it.
I wonder if this is a topic for another conversation, but the Pisces
can we do this
like,
again, please?
Yes.
I'd love to.
Good. Yes. Angelique, I need you to do this again, please. I know Shawna's in. Please.
Yes, okay. I'd love to.
I'm going to call it here. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us today. And thank you to all of our listeners. Yes. I hope that you fucking love the shit out of this new, more casual, more friendly, more profound podcast. Because I'm not the same. I'm not the same woman I was coming into this. I hope you aren't either. So please follow, subscribe, join, rate, whatever the fuck, on whatever platform you're on. It means a lot. Every listen, every stream, everything now, it makes a fucking world of difference, because I'm trying to bring conversations to people who are on their, what is necessarily a solo spiritual journey. Because just because you're going through the work on yourself doesn't mean you have to be lonely while you're doing it. Come join the conversations, join us. We are here. We want to be your new friends. We want to be your new community. Welcome to the group chat. So we'll see you next week, Thursday. I don't remember who's going to be on again next week, but it's going to be fucking phenomenal. So we will see you soon. Thank you. I love you. I love you, Angelique. I love you, Shawna. I love you.
I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love my dog. I love everybody.